Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Holistic Mental Health Summit, and we are here to support you create a happy, fulfilling life that is free from anxiety and overwhelm. And I'm so excited to have today's speaker. Our today's speaker is Dr. Christina Bjorndal. She's an ND and she's considered a authority in the treatment of any mental health conditions in the holistic natural world. So I'm super excited to have her. So thank you, Dr. Christina, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to be here. Thank you for hosting this.
You're most welcome. So our topic today is beyond labels. So how do you really move past traditional labels to reclaim your mental and emotional health? And let's start by talking to Dr. Christina about her own journey. So how did you find a way to specialize in mental health in your practice? And I know it originated from your own story. So if you can please share with us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I became a naturopathic doctor specifically for one intention, which was to help people regain their mental health. And that's because of my own experience with trying to find help for myself when I was struggling. So my struggles began in high school. I developed an eating disorder and I went on to university. And then by my third year, I found myself in a place where I had not been before, which was depressed and experiencing suicidal ideations. And I had a lot of anxiety and I was very overwhelmed. And so I was prescribed an antidepressant, which I took. And then a few months later, I found myself in another place that I'd never been before, which was experiencing little to no sleep. I was having rapid speech, very euphoric, and I ended up spinning out of control into a delusional, psychotic, manic episode. And it took 6 people to wrestle me into a straight jacket, and off I went to the hospital. I was injected with haloperidol, left in a rubber room to come back to reality. And when I came back, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1. And what I did with that label was I basically stuffed it really far down inside of me and did not want to look at it, did not want to talk about it, didn't want anyone to know about it. And I really didn't acknowledge that or accept that that was what I had. And so I just continued marching forward in the world. I am a recovering overachiever. So I ended up working in the corporate world and was climbing that ladder, ended up reporting to a CEO at a young age. But all the while, for most of that decade while I was working, I was wearing this mask that I'm okay on the outside, but I'm not really doing very well on the inside. And I ended up having a suicide attempt, which left me in a coma with kidney failure. I was on dialysis and was told I would need a kidney transplant. And I look at that experience as my spiritual crisis, because it was really at that point that when that attempt did not work and I was not successful, like here I am, this overachiever in all these areas of my life, and I'm not able to succeed at ending my life. I realized I needed to find another way to navigate this health journey or my life. And my friend gave me a book to read by Marianne Williamson. There was a quote in that book that struck me on surrender. And basically the quote goes along these lines, that surrender is not about breaking out of anything. It's a gentle melting into who we really are. And so we let down our armor, or we take off that mask, and we discover that all God needs is one sincere, surrendered moment when love matters more than anything and nothing else really matters at all. And so what was impactful for me in that quote was this word love, right? I did not love myself. I did not accept this diagnosis. I didn't like anything about it. And so that's really that was the turning point for me, was to learn basically I decided I needed to figure out how to love and accept myself. And I have been on that journey for the last, when was that? That was 1994. So I guess the last 25 years have really been about diving deeper into this piece of acceptance and love and compassion for myself. So I ended up, the same friend that gave me that book to read, she really encouraged me to go see a naturopathic doctor. And her and I were at a health show together, and I came across a flyer for a mental health public forum that was being offered by a nutritional psychiatrist. His name is Dr. Abraham Hoffer. And so I went to his session and I learned about nutrition and how to manage your health with supplements. And anyways, I became his patient. And at that time I was taking 5 psychotropic medications, and I started his protocol. And lo and behold, after a few weeks or months, I was still taking the medication at that time, but I wasn't doing well while I was on it. So when I added the supplement piece, I then ended up feeling like I was no longer depressed and I was no longer anxious. So I knew there was something to it. And eventually I took stock of my life and asked a question: if money didn't matter, what would I be doing? And it was not doing what I was doing. So I started looking into how do I become a naturopathic doctor, and I actually went back to high school when I was 33 because I didn't have the sciences to, like the first time around, I did more the arts commerce route. So I had to go back to high school, get the sciences, then go to university again, then go on to naturopathic school. So there's the story, 30-year story in a nutshell for you.
Wow, that's pretty empowering. That is really amazing. And that's my purpose of finding, or creating the Holistic Mental Health Summit, is there's not enough information out there, right? Mm. I grew to a mom who was bipolar, and she was also a diabetic. So somehow I think that is linked, because a lot of her manic episodes were related to her blood sugar fluctuations, and being a type 1, and her blood sugar was always like never stable, right? She had to give insulin. So that was one of the causes. And traditionally, if we look at the modern medicine or even holistic medicine in today's world, it's very easy to help people understand, okay, you have digestive issues, we can take care of that, take the supplement, If you have maybe autoimmune conditions, okay, So we are talking a lot more about physical health, even in the holistic world. When we talk about it should have been an integration of mind, body, spirit, but we just focus more on the holistic physical aspect of it. So that was my purpose in kind of trying to bring together people who are experts in their field, and we can share a lot more information. So when we look at different aspects of health, when you're looking at a patient, what are the most important things that you would like to address in a patient in terms of their health, or how would you talk to them about different aspects of health?
So just like you're saying, we want to understand that there's 4 aspects to you, right? Basically, you have the physical level, but there's also the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects. And I think if all we're going to focus on is that physical side, then we're going to miss 75% of the puzzle. So for myself, that's where I started. I started with putting in some physical building blocks. And, don't get me wrong, that's really important. We need to have these physical building blocks. But eventually for myself, I ended up bumping up against my thoughts and my emotions and my core beliefs, my shadow beliefs, my limiting beliefs. And these are all other aspects that need to be addressed, I think, to truly get to that place of healing. So on the physical level, what we want to understand is there's 3 macrosystems essentially within the container that is the body. So you have your neurotransmitters, and you have your neuroendocrine system or your hormonal system, and then you have your organs of detoxification. And the challenge with mental health is traditionally they're very much specifically focused on that one area, which is neurotransmitters. Mm-hmm. So we want to understand, and if I look back at myself, when I was a university student, what are most students? They're stressed, right? They're putting a lot of pressure on themselves. They're not eating well. They're financially strapped. So I look back now with the benefit of hindsight, and I think that really for me, that was what was the root of the problem at that time. But I was given neurotransmitter support to deal with the problem, which might not be the right tool for the job. So and so as naturopathic doctors, what we're trying to do is really figure out what is the root cause. And the reality is, for a lot of people, including myself, I had to work on all 3 of those macro systems. My hormones were also out of balance, needed neurotransmitter support, and my organs of detoxification, they weren't working very well either. So that's the framework that I talk about and where I how I investigate what's going on with people when I work with them.
So if somebody is traditionally diagnosed with, you know, either bipolar or anxiety depression, and they're taking medications, but they still don't feel it's under control, they keep trying different medications. And I'm not trying to say there's something wrong going the medical route, you know, if it's helping you 100%, go for it. But if you're still not 100% feeling better with, you know, all the medicines that you're doing, there's a deeper level issue. And a lot of the times emotions aren't addressed. You know, we live in a society where emotions are stuffed up and not made to express. So when you're dealing with clients, how do you go about helping them release emotions or working on a more mental, spiritual aspect?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a framework that I introduce. It's a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy and compassion focused therapy and mindfulness based therapy. And it's called, basically it's called the 7 R's of working with problematic thoughts and breaking the thought emotion cycle. So what I explain is, for most people, we're living right here from the neck up, and we're discounting our body for the most part. And then what happens is we may have a thought like, you know, I'm not worthy, which then triggers an emotion of sadness, which triggers another emotion of feeling, well, what's the point of being here? I don't have any friends, which triggers another emotion of feeling lonely. And so you just keep going around and around, and you can spiral down into states of depression and anxiety. So the first step in this process is to have a critical inquiry as to what it is that you're thinking. What are the thoughts that are going all on between these 2 ears? And if they are not supporting you, if they're not serving you, then we want to refrain from following that spiral anymore by relaxing into the breath. And then I teach a mindfulness exercise in terms of the breathing piece of the puzzle. And just to highlight the importance of the breath, most people are breathing also with the top little bits of their lungs. So we need to understand that your lungs go all the way down to the bottom of your rib cage, and you have your diaphragm there, and it pulls down so your lungs inflate. And what's sitting under your diaphragm is your adrenal glands. And it's your adrenal glands that respond to these thoughts that we're thinking. So you have to understand that your thoughts create neuropeptides. Neuropeptides affect the hormones that get produced, and then those hormones that get produced affect how you feel. So this is the field of psychoneuroimmunology. It started with Candace Pert was the researcher who wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion. So we really need to sort of understand this piece. I know for myself, when I was struggling for the decades that I struggled, I really was resistant to this idea that change your thoughts, change your life. And I think it was because I felt like people were implying that I was intentionally causing myself to feel not so good with the thoughts that I was thinking. But the reality is, now that I've learned this work of Candace Pert and understand this cascade that happens, I think the problem for me was I felt like I had to believe the thought. And you don't have to believe the thought. You just have to say it, which then helps to create a different cascade in the body in terms of a physiological state. So relaxing into the breath is a really important piece because it helps to get you to calm, creates a bit of space between the thoughts triggering the emotion. And so I usually have people look at something in nature, so that gives your mind a job to do, like focus on those leaves swaying on the tree or clouds moving in a sky, so that we have a chance to just calm that physiology slightly. And then the 4th R is to repeat this process, because you can't, this is basically neuroplasticity. So we're training your brain to think a different way. And you cannot just, if you want to have a toned bicep, you can't just lift one 5-pound weight and expect to have a toned bicep, or, you know, a 6-pack from your abdominals. You can't just do one sit-up. You have to repeat it. You've got to practice. You have to train yourself. And so that repetition piece is really important. And then the 5th step is basically rephrasing whatever it was that you recognized. So if you recognized that you, if the thought was like I said, I am unworthy, then the rephrase would be, I am worthy. And if you're like me and you were resistant to that idea, remember, you don't have to believe it. Like that's where I got stuck for so many years because I felt like I had to believe these thoughts. Eventually, you will feel differently and you will start to think differently. But it's not, you don't have to get caught up in believing it. Or if you're like me and you felt like that was like spraying, like saying I am worthy was like spraying whipping cream on a bunch of baloney, then just say I am.
Mhm.
And don't fill in the blank. Just keep it neutral. And remember this idea of psychoneuroimmunology. Thoughts are affecting how you feel. So you can enter this circle, like this thought emotion cycle, whether you're recognizing with the thought or you're working with the emotion that's rising within you. But here's the thing. Emotions themselves are only actually going to live within you for about 2 minutes. They are fueled to last a lifetime by the thoughts that we think.
Mm.
So really keep that in mind. So this is from the work of Jill Bolte Taylor, who wrote My Stroke of Insight. So you want to stay with the emotion, you want to breathe into it, but with no thought. And generally that emotion will rise and it will fall within you. You will not be stuck in that emotional state. It's the thoughts that fuel it. It's your thoughts that fuel it. So I start to encourage people usually by working on the thoughts first, and then allow the emotions to come.
That's beautiful. And in yoga, like I'm trained in Ayurveda and yoga as well. So in yoga, we say that if you control your breathing, that's how you control your mind. So breath is kind of the best way to connect with your energetic aspects, and also, to control your, like, all the monkey mind, right? So
Yeah.
that's really important. What are your thoughts on like blood sugar, along with, because we see a lot of blood sugar imbalances that can lead to adrenal issues. And so the body itself, any mechanisms going wrong in the body can reflect on the mind. So what are your thoughts on it?
I think the blood sugar piece is a really, really important piece with mental health. I know for me, again, I had this eating disorder piece. And so with an eating disorder, there's lots of blood sugar dysregulation going on, especially when you're binge eating and purging. So it's a big problem. And nowadays, I think we really have to understand that the industry, not only the food industry, so the food industry has us addicted to their products by manipulating the levels of fat, sugar, and salt. But also I think the health industry too has people very confused about what to eat, what not to eat. So my philosophy and approach is one of the books I've written is called The Essential Diet, Eating for Mental Health. It's basically just a roadmap in terms of the recipes and the two-week menu plan and nutritional analysis, grocery lists to help you. If you're trying to start, you want to make some changes and you don't know where to start, or you don't know what to eat, then start with that. Because what we want to understand is neurotransmitters and hormones, they are all derived from nutritional building blocks. And if you're deficient in some of these essential ingredients, because you can't physically make them yourself, nobody on the planet has the ability to make something called tryptophan, and tryptophan goes on to make serotonin. So if you're deficient, and I was deficient in tryptophan, so it was really eye-opening for me to realize that, because no wonder I struggled so much with my mood disorders, because I didn't have the nutritional building blocks to make serotonin. If my life depended on it, I couldn't make it myself because I wasn't eating the right things. So the blood sugar, so sugar and eating processed foods, it just wreaks havoc on your body, on your system, not only from this roller coaster ride that you can get on, but also from this concept of leaky gut, which contributes to inflammation, which leads to this idea of the brain on fire. So I really encourage people. There's a great I think it was CBC Doc Zone did a little documentary called The Secrets of Sugar. And an exercise for people, if you can watch that, but an exercise for people is to track how many grams of sugar are you eating in a day, and see if you can keep it under 36 grams for your daily total. And so, for example, I believe a can of Coke has 25 grams. So basically, drinking one can of Coke, you have pretty much consumed 100% of your allotment for the whole day. So it's really eye-opening to do this exercise for yourself. So anything you're drinking out of a can, a juice box, taking out of a package, a box, a container, carton, it's going to tell you the grams of sugar. And understand that 4 grams, like to put this in perspective, some people are like, well, what does that mean? 4 grams. I don't really know what that means. 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. So it helps for you to visualize, right? If you visualize 20, say something has 24 grams of sugar, well, that's 6 teaspoons of sugar, right? We've really gotten off track in our society. So I'm sorry, I probably went on a little bit of a tangent there with your question, but basically it's a big problem. What people are eating and the amount of sugar people are consuming is a really big problem. And it's an addictive substance too, right?
It is. And
yeah,
it's not a rant, but it's true. And the one thing I'd like to follow up with what you said is the health industry is not healthy as people think it is. I'll be very honest, because if you look at a lot of the energy bars which are on trend now, so everybody would grab a bar and they'll sit on your desk and eat, and because they have no time to cook their meals.
yeah.
But most energy bars themselves have 20 to 25 grams of sugar. If you look at the healthier vegetarian plant-based ones, and if you're sitting on a desk, you're not going to need 25 grams of sugar, and that itself is going to impact your entire body and mind. And the sugar addiction sometimes also stems from where you're feeling unhappy or not happy about yourself. So a lot of the times, your low mood will make you crave sugar. Your low mood will make you push you to get something sweet to make you feel better about yourself. So it can itself be a vicious cycle. So if somebody wants to identify which is one of the 4 aspects of health, like mental, emotional, if they just want to get started on the one thing or really decide to clean up their life, but they want okay, this is the direction I should really start, what would your advice be?
Well, that's the thing. If you want to show up differently tomorrow, if you want to have a different experience tomorrow, you got to show up differently somehow. You got to do something differently than what you're doing today. And so on that physical level, I talk about the foundation being diet, sleep, exercise, and managing stress. So I basically ask my patients, of those 4, after I've taken their case, I've already determined from my assessment of them what steps they need to take in those 4 areas. But I ask them, because it's not really about me telling you. I mean, yes, I can encourage you and tell you what to do, but at the end of the day, you're going to do what you're going to do, right? So I get their buy-in. So I ask them, well, which of these 4 levels, what do you, and based on what we've talked about, what do you think you need to work on? And so most patients say, well, I need to incorporate the tryptophan forming foods. I need to decrease coffee. I need to increase water. So I would just start there with that. And the other piece that I really emphasize is movement. Again, we have become a very sedentary society, and somehow we have given up 2 hours of our life to screen time in the evenings where we're watching TV or Netflix or on our phones, iPads. And what have we given up in that 2 hours? We have given up cooking and exercise. Yeah. So I would really, and again, this like Michael Pollan is another great person for people to reference. His book is In Defense of Food, Eat Food, Mostly Plants, Not Too Much. And that's what he says. He says, it used to be a community kind of, or a family event, to cook. And now it's nobody's got time because we're too busy working ourselves into an early grave. So I would encourage people to start where it feels possible for you, because everybody's different. But just remember that if you want to have a different experience tomorrow, you got to do something differently.
Going back to stress a little bit, because we live in a world that is stressful. Every time, we have so much more technology today. but that also puts a lot more demands on especially working women. It's not easy to run off to a job, to take care of your family, to cook, and that itself causes a lot of women to be stressed out. And as you know, holistic professionals, we know the impact it has on your body, mind, spirit, like all levels. So would you like to talk a little bit about the stress piece and really help our audiences understand what's going on and how it's really impacting them? Because everybody talks like, okay, I know I'm stressed, but nobody really knows that you're paying a lot for the stress.
That's right. Yeah, so basically we talk about in Canada as the top 4 things that get Canadians at the end of the day are heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, and mental health. But I think what's behind each and every one of those 4 conditions is stress. So I think the number one thing at the end of the day, or the top 4 health concerns at the end of the day, is stress, 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 and stress. So I talked about the 7 R's of working with problematic thoughts, and I talked about doing the breathing when you recognize that you're in a dangerous neighborhood in terms of your thoughts. We also want to understand here, and one of the things that is happening in the body when we're doing the breathing is we're moving you from what's called a sympathetic or stress state to a parasympathetic state. And as holistic practitioners, we're very big on diet and eating a healthy diet. However, we have to understand that digestion is a parasympathetic process in the body. So unless you're in a calm, relaxed state, you may not be getting the full benefit of the nutrition. So I cannot highlight the importance of tuning in with yourself and asking, how are you feeling in the moment? And if you are feeling stressed, you're physiologically wired and designed to calm yourself down if only you would take the 30 seconds it takes to take a few of these deep diaphragmatic breaths. So what I teach my patients is I want you to do a few of these breathing exercises, and I would encourage everyone to go to my website, my clinic website, which is naturalterrain.com. And this Breaking the Thought Emotion handout or information there where I talk about the breathing and where to put your hand positions, it's all explained in there. I just won't go through it now just because of time. But I ask patients to take these deep breaths at a few different times throughout the day. So when you open your eyes, you're going to take a couple of deep breaths and you're going to say 3 things that you're grateful for. There's a lot of research around gratitude and neuroplasticity and shifting your physiological state. You're going to do the breathing whenever you obviously catch your thoughts. You're going to do this before you eat, every time you go to the bathroom, whenever you're standing around at an elevator, at a grocery store, at a coffee shop. Hopefully you're not drinking coffee, but if you are, coffee shop, in a bank lineup. Anytime you're waiting, you're going to engage in breathing. You're not going to fill the space with your phone like everybody does. Because constantly being connected to these devices, as much as we think that we're in demand or we might be needed or wanted, you really are just disrupting your physiology. Not only from the blue light perspective, but there's also the EMF perspective, and also what might be on the other end of that text, phone call, or Facebook scroll. So, and then the last time I get people to do the breathing, or last 2 times, is actually when you're driving. I don't have people take their hands off the wheel, but you're just engaging and basically being present is what I'm teaching people. How to be in the present moment. Most of us are living in the past or the future. How many times have you driven to work and you don't even remember driving to work? Because you're already at work, or you're in the shower. And this is an exercise that I do is I ask people when they go in the shower to just pay attention to what's happening when you're in the shower. When I was asked to do this exercise, I thought, well, there's nothing going on when I'm in the shower. Well, actually, what in reality was happening was there was a lot of negative thought going on when I was in that shower about my body or about what I had to do. I mean, I was nowhere but in the shower. I was nowhere but present. So, and then the last time to do this breathing is before you go to bed at nighttime. And so the idea behind this is, and I'm only asking here for 12 to 30 seconds, okay? I'm not asking for you to sit for half an hour at the beginning of your day or half an hour at the end of your day. I mean, I would love that, but the reality is everybody's too busy and too stressed to do that. But if you're taking these mini reset breaks at all these different times throughout your day, you're constantly resetting your nervous system. Like, think about, I know there's different people, you know, from different religions, but I just want people to understand, like, if you brought to mind a Buddhist monk, when was the last time you saw a Buddhist monk running around stressed out all over town? Right? You don't see that, partly because they spend a lot of time calming their nervous system. And you're physiologically designed, as I said, to calm yourself down by dropping into that diaphragm and tapping those adrenal glands that are needing needing a hug because they're stressed out because you're stressed out, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the biggest thing. So that's one key thing, is just in getting going with this breathing piece of the puzzle. I have to say, it has saved my life. My naturopathic doctor taught this to me. Up until that point, nobody asked me like what I was thinking. Nobody taught me how to be in the present moment, how to almost like separate myself from my thoughts, right? To almost be an observer of my thoughts versus being consumed by my thoughts. But the other thing that really helps me with stress, and this is for the moms who are working is boundaries, setting boundaries. A lot of women are saying yes to requests when they really mean no. So if you're saying yes and then you hang up the phone or you walk away from the computer and you are like, oh, why did I commit to that? It's actually a no. Then I would encourage you to make it a no. So before, and this is hard for people to transition. I know for me it was difficult because I'm a recovering people pleaser and I always would say yes to everything. So we want to sit with the request, right? Sit with the request and tune in with yourself and say, okay, you know, is this coming from, where's my need to do this or honor this request coming from? If it's coming from this place of, oh, because I'm people pleasing, then I would encourage you to make it a no, right? Because we're giving away our time, and time is the only thing you can't buy, and it's the only thing you really, you know, it is the, you know, it's a finite thing, and your health and your quality of your life is going to be impacted with the time that you have. So we're wanting to make a connection there with how are you spending your time. And I think that we're doing a lot of unnecessary things in our society that's creating a lot of the stress. Our kids are enrolled in too many things. So
Yeah. I think, you know, everybody's pursuing busyness, right? Like everybody is busy in today's world. And that's the one thing, like I appreciate, you know, you talking about it or sharing that women have to see themselves as superheroes and say yes to everything. And the busier you are, a lot of people think you feel more accomplished, but it's so false. Like from my own life experience in the past, like where I am today, I've like turned down half the things that I would do in the past, you know, 6 months or something. I had to make massive shifts in my life and learn to absolutely say no and mean no when I was wasting my time or doing things that would have been important, but not to me.
that's right.
Yeah. And that's how I think. So, you know, Dr. Christina is giving you the permission to say no for those who are really struggling to say no.
Yeah, you can say, I heard, I'm, you can even use me as your crutch. Just say, oh, you know, my doctor said I had to say no. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I really, you know, I really wish you luck with that. I'm just not able to help you. Thank you so much for asking me. I'm just not able to contribute at this point, you know, to that bake sale, to that bottle drive, to that whatever gala event. Yeah.
And that's the best way to get rid of a lot of stresses, you know, because we fill our days, we fill our times with mindless activities. Then you're not going to have time to breathe. You're not going to have time to sit down at your desk and eat. And if your brain doesn't register your eating, it's not going to send those digestive enzymes. You're not going to break down the food, and you're never going to make those neurotransmitters. So for everybody listening, this is extremely, extremely important, is to have time for yourself and start saying no to things that don't bring you happiness, that things that don't bring you joy. and that itself will decrease your stress by 50% or more. So one of the freebies that Dr. Christina has generously gifted us to all our audiences is a meditation on forgiveness and how important is forgiveness when it comes to mental health.
I think it's really important because, so if you're the person who is the one that has had the struggle, so like in my case with bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, etc., this is, I guess sometimes people don't understand it, right? Sometimes family members don't understand it, and it can be hurtful to be misunderstood, right? And I know I know that I have been misunderstood by people, and so this forgiveness meditation for me was really, really helpful in my healing journey, to learn to just to let go of some of the past hurts that I've carried, but also perhaps the people that I may have hurt when I wasn't as conscious, or I was when I was stuck in the throes of my mental illness, especially psychosis. Things can happen when you're psychotic that, I mean, it's just out of your control. It really is. However, it still doesn't come. It still can come with the aftermath. So, and I feel like it's one of the only conditions where, most health conditions people grant grace to. Like if you have cancer, people come to see you, and I don't find people with cancer apologizing because they have cancer. Mm-hmm. But I feel like especially with bipolar disorder, and maybe this is just me, I haven't done a survey and asked other people that I know with this health condition, or my patients with this health condition, if they felt like they have to apologize, but I feel like we aren't granted the grace that we would have been granted if we were suffering from cancer or heart disease, for that matter. So forgiveness for me has been a really, really important step in healing. So I hope people enjoy it, and I hope they find some value out of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, and forgiveness, self-forgiveness, or forgiving others is really important piece of your journey. So that can help you bring some inner peace and some inner calm, and that helps you surrender as well, right? Like once you forgive yourself, anything else you can just, whatever your faith is, you can just give it to God, which, any God, any higher power that you believe in. So thank you so much, Dr. Christina. It was truly a joy to have you, and we learned so much with you. So thank you once again for being here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was great to be here.
So you can find out more about Dr. Christina on her website, drchristinabjorndal.com, or you can also find out more about her at her clinic website, naturalterrain.com. And you can click the link below to access the forgiveness meditation. Also, if you are interested in purchasing all the interviews, all these interviews are free for you to listen for up to 28 or 24 hours now, and then we'll have a replay of 48 hours. But if you want to have these fantastic information-packed interviews at your go, you can download all the audios when you buy the upgrade package. So click on the link below to purchase the package. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next interview.